What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we've got a slammin' show for you all, as we have a lot of volleyball to get into, such as USC men's volleyball taking down Penn State. How did those little Trojans do it? Man, guess big things do eventually come in small packages. And how about UC Santa Barbara taking down Pepperdine on the road in 5 sets? The Gauchos making a statement after the past couple weeks. Also, we've got the Battle of the Bigs this weekend, as Set Point is going to be making its way over there. I'm excited for this show, everybody, and I hope you all are too, because it's time to hand me a volleyball. Set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up all some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And what is happening, everybody? Hope you all are having a great evening. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point. Hope you all are enjoying your Monday. Hope you all are enjoying all the sports action happening in the world, mainly in volleyball, for those that are volleyball heads like me. And this is episode 126 of Set Point. I can't believe Set Point has been going on for that long, but I digress. And you know what? Since I'm a fan of having new catchphrases, I'm going to actually keep that catchphrase. We're in for a slammin' show. Slammin' show. I like that. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor for IE Sports Radio is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California _Warriors, and on Facebook by typing the word Southern California and then Warriors. The second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Background checks are always important when it comes to new hire-ons, and Kit Freeman is the man to go to. He's founded and managed Background Check International Businesses since 1994, and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. They do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces, aka Facebook, as you can find them on Facebook by typing the word Background Check International, then put a dash, then put BCI. They also have a website, www.bcint.com, and IE Sports Radio is on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and on Facebook by typing the word IE, then sports, then radio. And when you go to the IE Sports Radio website, you can find a Patreon link with 5 different tiers. The first one will start out at $5 a month. This donation will get you a shout out from all 29 of our shows, and the higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and you even have a chance to be featured on the segment of the flagship show of IE Sports Radio, the defining moment. Because for the past 7.5 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, other authorized media personnel, and even coaches. In addition, IE Sports Radio has built tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities and all sports around the world. All the while, IE Sports Radio has continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you, everyone, for helping make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And we'd like to give a shout-out to our new fan of the month of January. He happens to be Steeler Jim, the big-time Steelers fan, as he is a huge Steelers fan. Unfortunately, he is bummed out about how the Steelers lost in the first round of the NFL playoffs, but he is happy that he got to see Ben Roethlisberger in the postseason one last time. Also, there's going to be some big changes and lots of big upcoming things coming up for IE Sports Radio and for all of our shows, as you're going to see more interaction, and you'll also get to see Set Point do some big things. But that's later on the show. Now, without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. So, I'm actually going to switch things up really quick here. As we say hello to the chat room, we have Marcus Vitale, the host of our Atlanta sports show. He says, Battle of the Bigs, time to hit that spike. And he says, have a great show. And I appreciate you for tuning in. Adam Karnick, the host of Chi-Town Weekly, is in the chat room. He says, good evening, Teran. He just concluded his show, Chi-Town Weekly. Then we have Gina G in the chat room. She says, let's get it, Teran. Have a great show. Appreciate you tuning in. And then also we have Mike Pat in the chat room. He says, have a great show. I appreciate you all tuning in the chat room. Now let's get on into the volleyball action. We're actually going to start off with the NCAA women's volleyball coaching news, as we had a couple big-time news break today, as the first bit of news was that Kim Hill, the gold medalist from the U.S. women's volleyball national team from the Tokyo Olympics, has been hired on as a volunteer assistant coach for Long Beach State's women's volleyball team. So this was just released today, as the press release says, Long Beach State head women's volleyball coach Tyler Hildebrand completed his staff with the addition of Kim Hill as the squad's volunteer assistant coach. Hildebrand says, we are incredibly fortunate to have Kim be a part of our Long Beach family. She has been one of the best outside hitters in the world for the past 2 decades, a 2-time Olympian, and a gold medalist. And Hildebrand also says, what I am excited about, however, is for our girls to learn from Kim as a person, a leader, and a mentor. She has already developed a broad skill set of how to be part of and nurture a great team culture. And like it says in the press release, Hill just recently won a gold medal with the U.S. women's volleyball national indoor team in the Tokyo Olympics, and now she joins Long Beach State's coaching staff as a volunteer assistant coach, which is big stuff. Like, Long Beach State has been making moves, honestly. Like, Tyler Hildebrand coming in from Nebraska, and they also got a couple good big transfers. So Long Beach State is making some big-time moves right here, and I am all for it. And they also just recently hired on as an assistant coach Kirsty LaRue, as they hired her actually from a couple weeks ago. I actually missed this news, but I guess I should point that out right now. So honestly, Long Beach State has been revamping their roster ever since the departure of Joy Mackenzie Furbringer, but I like this hire of Kim Hill. We will be seeing the full Long Beach State women's volleyball coaching staff on Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time at the Pyramid Plaza at Long Beach State, which I'm actually looking forward to attending that. I will be in attendance to meet Tyler Hildebrand, and definitely do be on the lookout for any interviews that I might get. So that's the first bit of news in terms of coaching. So the second bit of news in terms of NCAA women's volleyball coaching news is that SEC Coach of the Year, Julie Darty Dennis, has signed a contract extension with Mississippi State. So this is big news right there just because she did lead Minnesota to, I believe it's third ever postseason appearance in terms of the NCAA tournament. And that's big time right there. And I'm glad she got a contract extension, and she definitely deserves it. So honestly, I think Mississippi State is making the right moves. And like I said a couple weeks ago, they did get a couple of big transfers, which is big time for them just because the SEC is starting to shape up and become another powerhouse. But with all of the departures coming from Kentucky and a couple coming from Florida, the SEC could be up for grabs, and it could be ripe for the picking for Mississippi State. So we'll have to see in regards to that. So on the topic of Mississippi State, that's a good segue to transfer into the transfer news. So when it came to the transfer news coaching poll for what you guys wanted, you, the voters, decided to vote for me going in-depth on big-name transfers instead of just reading off the most recent transfers. So I picked some of the most noteworthy transfers that just happened this past week. And while we're on the topic of Mississippi State, the first big-time transfer that I'll be breaking down in-depth is Emily Arthur. She is going to be an up-and-coming senior, and she transfers from Penn State to Mississippi State. Now, for Mississippi State, they return a good portion of their roster, as they return Gabby Waden, their kill leader, with 429 kills. They also return Lauren Myrick, who had 368 kills. They also return Shania Cromartie, who had 279 kills. So those are some big-time hitters that's going to be returning for Mississippi State. The Bulldogs do lose out on Margaret Dean, one of their setters from this past fall. As we welcome Davidson Crooks into the chat room, he says, "What's good?" Nothing much, just talking about some SEC transfer news. As Mississippi State landed the former Penn State setter, Emily Arthur. So Emily Arthur will be joining the Mississippi State roster, and she'll be joining the other setter, Gabby Coulter, who returns to the Bulldogs roster next year. Now, here's the thing about Mississippi State's roster. They actually ran a 6-2 offense. They ran two setters, and I could see Emily Arthur actually getting playing time. She did not get too much playing time with Penn State. She only got to play a grand total of 4 sets all season last year. She had 14 assists, and that was pretty much it. So Arthur, unfortunately, didn't really work out with Penn State, but she gets a fresh start with a upbeat Mississippi State team who's still looking for its first NCAA tournament win, and she does get a lot of pin hitters to set the ball to. So that's big-time news for Emily Arthur. I think the Bulldogs are going to be quite something going into next season. So Hail State right there. The second big-time transfer is Kasia Partika. Now, she's not really the biggest name out there. She comes from Long Beach State, a.k.a. my neck of the woods. She did actually get to play quite a bit for Long Beach State, as she was a part of their 6-2 offense. She had 279 assists. She played in 35 sets, and she also had 53 digs. She is only a freshman, so she'll be a sophomore next year. So for Kasia Partika, she actually joins a Wyoming team which loses both of its setters. They lost Peyton Chamberlain to the transfer portal, and then Abby Olson also graduated, and Kira Slavic is also not on the roster anymore. So Kasia Partika, along with Macy Boggs, will be battling out for playing time, and I would not be surprised if those two also ran a 6-2 offense in Wyoming's program. So for Wyoming, they went 16-14 overall, 8-10 in the Mountain West Conference. So Wyoming obviously has some work to do, but they do return quite a bit of pin hitters. They return Casey McMahon, as she had 316 kills on the season last year. She led the team in that category. Naya Scheim was second on the team in kills with 287. And she didn't even play that many sets. So, well, not that many sets. She played 96 sets. But the fact that Scheim comes back is big-time news for Wyoming. They also returned Erica Jones, who had 110 kills, and Haley Zorowski, who had 158 kills. So I think this Wyoming team could be on the up and up. We'll have to see, but I think they're off to a solid start. And actually, Erica Jones was their dig leader, not their kill leader. She had 359 digs. She played in 110 sets. So my apologies for misreading that, but there's that right there. So next up in terms of big-time transfers, this was the biggest one right here. As we welcome Courtney Harden in the chat room. He says, T-Rod, what's up? Just going over some transfer news, my brother. So going over to this transfer, Courtney Bazzario transfers from Iowa to Pitt. This is what Pitt needed. They now need a big-time hitter because they lost quite a bit of firepower from their team that advanced to the Final Four. They lost Kayla Lund to graduation, Lecator member Monet to graduation, Anastasia Russ to the transfer portal, Kylie Levers, the setter, is no longer there, and Chinaza Endi is graduating as well. So for Pitt, they lost quite a bit of firepower, and they're basically on a little bit of a rebuild mode. But getting Courtney Bazzario is huge. She had 436 kills for Iowa, which was first in that category. She had 141 digs, and she had 25 blocks, which was good for third on the team. And Pitt needs a good opposite that's not a partial middle. Like, that was kind of their problem. Like, most of their opposites or right side hitters were basically partially middle. But with Courtney Bazzario, she fills that role quite nicely. She is 6'5", and she definitely brings a lot of firepower. Like, that probably could not have been any more bigger for the Panthers to get that from Iowa. So Courtney Bazzario, I've seen her play in high school. She did really well at Orange Lutheran High School, led that team to a CIF Southern Section championship. So I know how Courtney Bazzario plays. She sometimes can set the ball. She's kind of like a mini Catherine Plummer. I know that's a bit of a stretch to compare her to, but Bazzario is buzzing, and all the buzz is now going to be happening in Pitt because they have themselves a great opposite. And with returning Lexis Akio, as well as Valeria Vasquez Gomez and Rachel Fairbanks as their other setter, and Sabrina Starks, who we're going to wait and see what her final year of eligibility looks like. I think Pitt can still make some noise. We'll have to see, though. Then jumping over to the Big 12, we have Kansas State as they landed Elena Baca from St. Mary's. So for Kansas State, they returned quite a good number of players next year. They returned Aaliyah Carter, who had 431 kills, and keep in mind she's only 5'9". She is not the tallest girl, but she is legit a good hitter on the left side. Like, she could jump out the gym. She is phenomenal. Kansas State also returns Mackenzie Morris. They return Haley Warner. They return Cade Fernholz. It's quite astounding how many players K-State returns. So for K-State, landing Elena Baca means they will have another pin hitter, as she had 189 kills, which was second on St. Mary's. She had 155 digs, she played in 75 sets, and she had 28 service aces, which led St. Mary's in that category. And she's an outside hitter, so Kansas State is definitely going to be something to watch for in the Big 12. I think Kansas State has a good foundation going on. Like, with all of their players that they've had ever since they were freshmen returning and gaining more and more experience, I think Kansas State could make some noise. They made the NCAA tournament last year. Unfortunately, they didn't go far, but I think with some of these big-time transfers coming in, I think they have what it takes to basically hang, not beat, but hang with some of the top dogs from the Big 12, such as Texas and Baylor. We'll have to see, though. They did lose a few players to the transfer portal, but honestly, I think K-State has something going on. And for the last in-depth transfer, we have Kylie Robinson, who transfers from Oregon to Tennessee. Kylie Robinson is a setter. She had 468 assists. She played in 98 sets for the Ducks. She had 201 digs and 17 service aces. So the big question for Tennessee is, will Natalie Hayward return? For her, she theoretically has one more year of eligibility due to the COVID year, as if Natalie Hayward returns for her 5th year, we could be seeing a 6-2 offense depending on what Tennessee wants to run. So pretty much Natalie was the main setter as she had 1,162 assists. And honestly, I think for Tennessee, you can't go wrong with either Robinson or Hayward. Hayward is a phenomenal leader. There's a reason why she made all SEC honors and she had a lot of accolades for Tennessee. There's a reason why Tennessee was so competitive this year, and there was a reason why Tennessee made it all the way to the round of 32. They did all they could against Ohio State, but unfortunately it was to no avail to them moving on. Regardless, Tennessee is back on the map in terms of being a strong SEC team. And for Robinson, if Hayward doesn't come back, she will have the honor of setting the ball to Morgan Fingal, who had 338 kills, which was good for second on the team. Then we had Lily Feltz, who, just like Hayward, has a lot of question marks with her eligibility, as she could take that final year of eligibility, but it's not 100% certain. And then Ava Bell and Danielle Mahaffey are also good pin hitters. They had 151 and 183 kills, respectively, for Tennessee. And honestly, I think if those players that I just mentioned come back, then Tennessee could, hence the word could, make noise in the SEC. And that would be huge right there, especially since all the players from Kentucky, or some of them, have transferred out of Kentucky. So I think the SEC could be up for grabs if those players, along with Hayward, do return. If they don't, then it's Kylie Robinson's offense to run. And then if all those players don't return, then we'll have to see what Tennessee has to offer. We'll see what the Lady Vols have to offer. Fingal is a phenomenal hitter. I think she could do big things for the Lady Vols, but we'll have to see what the rest of the SEC has to offer. And we have to see what this season has to offer. So that's going to do it for the transfer news right there. I hope you all enjoyed the transfer news portion. It's basically just the big name transfers in terms of their statistics and from their school and who they're transferring to, instead of just me saying, oh, this girl transferred from this school and that girl transferred from that school. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get the listeners more engaged instead of them saying, oh gosh, here we go, it's this player, then that player, and then that player. So with that out of the way, now let's jump on into the NCAA men's volleyball action from week number 3, as we had a lot of matches going on in terms of the ranked-on-ranked category. We had a lot of amazing results. Let's start with this first result. We had number 13 UC Irvine hitting the road to BYU to play them at Provo, Utah. So BYU barely got out of this one alive as they beat UC Irvine in 5 sets. So the first set, BYU mainly trailed in the early parts of the set, but they led 7-6, and then they never trailed after that because BYU just has this really talented hitter in David Gardini. The dude was phenomenal, and Alex Asu was also big time as well. They were kind of their two-headed monster as the two combined for 33 kills. BYU as a team only had 50 kills, but I'll be getting into that a little bit later. So the second set, BYU never trailed, but the set was tied at 12-12, and it was also tied at 16-16, 19-19, and the big one was 22-22. However, BYU eventually pulled away with some well-timed points as they took a 2-0 lead over UC Irvine, and it looked as if UC Irvine was kind of going to get swept. Keep in mind, UC Irvine was coming off of that big win over Stanford a few weeks ago, or if not last week. But UC Irvine responded in a big way, as UC Irvine never trailed, and after it was 2-2, they were in no danger whatsoever. They just took the set and ran with it, as the strong arm of Francesco Sani, as well as Hilir Heno, basically just paved the way for them, winning that third set. Now, the fourth set was, ooh, baby. The fourth set was something to remember, as neither team led by more than 2 points in that set. And BYU actually had 2 match points, but UC Irvine, those anteaters, never gave up, as they eventually scored 3 straight points after trailing 25-24, and then they took the set, as they actually got kills from Connor Campbell, and then they had 2 more kills from Cole Gillis. Those 2 came up big, considering BYU was zoning in on Sani as well as Heno. So off to the 5th set, and the 5th set was a little anticlimactic. BYU never trailed, and they led by as many as 7. However, credit to UC Irvine, they cut the lead down to as little as 2. It kind of reminded me of that Wisconsin-Nebraska NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship match. Unfortunately for UC Irvine, they just could not get within any closer, as they just dug themselves a big hole that they could not dig themselves out of, as BYU avoided the upset and took the 5th set 15-12. BYU was led by Gardini, who had 18 points, while Asu had 15 kills, and I said 18 points, I meant 18 kills. Something that really boggled my mind was that BYU only hit .216 on the match, and like I said, they only had 50 kills compared to UC Irvine's 63. More on that a little later, as they were led in the dig department by Mitchell Worthington, who had 11 digs. As for UC Irvine, Francesco Sani had 23 kills. He did have 9 hitting errors, but he hit .333. Hilir Heno had 16 kills, he hit .286, and then Cole Gillis had the 10x10, as he had 10 kills and 10 digs. Heno also chipped in double-digit digs, as he had 15 digs, which was quite nice. As a team, UC Irvine hit .323, which was rather surprising. They hit that good of a hitting percentage, but unfortunately, they just could not pull out the win. And then the second matchup between these two teams, BYU wound up winning a little bit less stressful of a match, as they won at 25-22, 25-18, and 25-21. So that was that for the first matchup right there. The second matchup, I recap, will be Grand Canyon at UC San Diego. 6th-ranked Grand Canyon trying to bounce back from its losses to Penn State, while UC San Diego trying to build off of their win against Stanford. So the first set, GCU actually led 13-9, but then UC San Diego went on a 5-1 run to tie it at 14-14. They eventually made it a 7-1 run to take the lead at 16-14, but eventually GCU tied it up at 18-18, and after that, they never trailed again, taking the first set 25-21. Set 2, GCU led for a majority of the set, but funny enough, UC San Diego actually led 11-10. But then 4 straight points from the Lopes made it so that GCU never ever trailed again in that set, as they took it by a score of 25-19, and it looked as if Grand Canyon was about to get back on track. They were led by Camden Gianni, who had 17 kills. Like, this kid is the real deal. I'll get more into his stats a little bit later. But the third set, GCU actually jumped out to an early 5-1 lead, only to see UC San Diego tie it at 6-6. The Tritons eventually led it at 19-18, but got outscored 6-3 and was down 24-22. And it looked as if this was going to be the match right here. It looked as if Grand Canyon was going to sweep the Tritons at the Rimac Arena. However, credit to the Tritons, they actually dodged 2 match points and eventually scored 4 straight to win the third set 26-24 and extend the match to a 4th set. So good for the Tritons. I think UC San Diego is definitely an underrated team. I think they're a little underappreciated. I think everyone forgets that they had a strong roster from last year, a team that knocked off Hawaii in the Big West tournament, and a team that got to the conference tournament championship, only to lose to the eventual champion UC Santa Barbara. So in set 4, UC San Diego actually led 4-1, but then they gave up 5 straight points as GCU never trailed after that, as they just looked back. They never looked back and led and won the 4th set 25-20, as Grand Canyon was led by Gianni, who had 17 kills. He hit .333. He had 4 service aces and 7 digs, so this dude was stuffing the stat sheet. Jackson Hickman had 10 kills, as he also chipped in 8 digs as well. Cole Udall added 10 digs, while Colin Lovejoy hit .833 and had 5 kills on 6 swings. Hugo Fisher had 9 kills as well, as Grand Canyon hit 267. UC San Diego, on the other hand, was led by Kyle McCauley, who had 16 kills with a hitting percentage of .316 with 8 digs, while Matt Palma, the new libero for UC San Diego, had 9 digs. Wyatt Harrison had 11 kills, but that was pretty much it for UC San Diego and its scoring output, as their next kill leader each had 6 kills, as UC San Diego hit only 184 in the match, which was a little concerning, but again, Grand Canyon is good as advertised. Like, Camden Gianni is debatably the best player in the MPSF, so we'll see if Grand Canyon can build off that. Hitting the road to Romeoville, we have number 5 Long Beach State at number 7 Lewis. So the first set, Lewis led by as many as 3 for the most part, and it started leading after it trailed 10-9. They led 16-13 and 21-19, and it looked as if Long Beach State was suffering from a little bit of jet lag. But the Beach scored 5 straight points, and they won via a kill from their newcomer, Alex Niklov. Now, this kid is actually quite phenomenal. He's done really well for the Beach this season, as Long Beach State took the first set 25-22. Long Beach State led most of the way, and they never got down on themselves. They trailed in the early stages of the set, but Long Beach State just basically showed their grit and determination, as they wound up winning that second set 25-22, as they were up 2-0 in the match. Set 3 looked as if it was going to be tough for both teams, as neither team led by more than 2 points. Long Beach State eventually led 20-17, and it looked as if the Beach was going to break out the brooms in Romeoville. Long Beach State actually had 3 match points. It looked as if it was going to be a sweep. They were up 24-22, and I'm thinking, okay, this one's pretty much a wrap. Long Beach State can't possibly mess this up. Unfortunately for Long Beach State, and to the credit of Lewis, they actually dodged 2 match points, and they scored the final 2 points to take the third set, 26-24. So I was quite impressed. Actually, Long Beach State had 3 match points, and Lewis scored the last 5 points. So honestly, it's just more impressive. Like, Lewis was down 24-21, and they scored 5 straight points. Very impressive. But then set 4, Long Beach State led most of the way. They never trailed. And to the credit of Lewis again, they got the score to as close as 18-18. But then Long Beach State led by Spencer Olivier, as well as Alex Niklov and Clark Godbold, really stepped it up as they took the fourth set 25-20 and the match at the Neil Carey Arena. Niklov led the way with 16 kills with a hitting percentage of .364. Godbold had 14 kills with a hitting percentage of .300, and Olivier had 12 kills with a hitting percentage of .296. Long Beach State hit .309, which was very impressive. Mason Briggs, now this guy is also an impressive stud at the libero position. He had 19 digs, which was quite nice. He almost had half the amount of digs that Long Beach State had as a team. Quite impressive. Lewis, on the other hand, was led by Tyler Mitchum, who had 15 kills. He hit .462, only having 3 hitting errors. But that's pretty much their only double-digit kill leader. I'm going to say this again, as Lewis suffered this problem with Ryan Conan last year. Get your team more involved. They cannot win with just one hitter in particular. Like, Lewis cannot win the NCAA championship with just one player carrying the way offensively. They need other players Their second kill leader was Michael Sack, who had 9 kills. He hit .429, which was quite impressive. And then Cole Brillhart had 8 kills. But like I said, Tyler Mitchum was the only one in double digits in terms of the kill category, as Lewis hit .226 on the night, which wasn't bad. I mean, it could have been worse, considering Long Beach State is a great blocking team. They always have a great game plan with Alan Knipe, and the offense runs very smooth under Allen's son, Aiden. But for Lewis, they have to bring their A game against some of these bigger opponents. Like, if they want to be the best, they have to beat some of the best. Like, they have to beat those Long Beach States, the Hawaiis, the Penn States, the UCLAs. You can't just breeze through your conference and say, oh, we won our conference, look at us. No, it doesn't work like that. You actually have to be battle tested, and you actually have to beat some of the top dogs. And this has kind of been Lewis's problem throughout past years as well. So it's a tough one for Lewis, but honestly, Long Beach State was ready to play, and obviously Long Beach State was hungry, considering they were coming off of a win over Princeton, and they also beat Erskine on Monday, so they actually got a few more reps in after their first week was canceled due to a COVID protocol. Also, Long Beach State swept Loyola of Chicago 25-17, 25-17, and 25-22. So Long Beach State completed the Illinois sweep as they moved to 4-0 on the season. Now we jump into the upsets that actually happened. So UC Santa Barbara, the team that had been off to a rocky start, coming in at 1-3, faced off against No. 4 Pepperdine, which had not lost a match going into this. They actually honored one of their past championship teams, as Santa Barbara, going into this match, they actually were coming off of a loss to Princeton a couple nights ago, as they lost to Princeton 22-25, 25-18, 31-29, and 25-13. I forgot that UC Santa Barbara played Princeton, and this was at the Thunderdome. I was shocked to see Princeton beating that team. No offense to Princeton, they're a good group. They have a good foundation, and it's good to see them back on the court after they were unable to play last year. But UC Santa Barbara losing to them? Did USC really break UC Santa Barbara after the UC Santa Barbara Invitational? No. So the first set, UCSB actually led by as many as 5. They led by 15-10, as it looked as if the Gauchos were actually going to come out swinging. But then Pepperdine tied it up at 17-17, only to see the Gauchos lead 22-20. Then Pepperdine scored 3 straight points to lead 23-22. But they did need 2 set points in order to win the first set, as they got a kill from Alex Gettinger as the Waves took the first set. As for the second set, UC Santa Barbara led 3-0 to start off, and then after that, no team led by more than 2 points, which was quite nice. I loved seeing those back-and-forth contests. But then UC Santa Barbara led 21-18, and then Pepperdine never really had an answer for them. So the match was even at 1-1 at that point. Then Santa Barbara basically never trailed. They were in no danger whatsoever. Pepperdine did get the set to a respectable margin. They only lost the set 25-22. But UC Santa Barbara went up 2-1 in the match after winning that third set. The fourth set, UCSB led 6-5, but that was the last time they ever led in that set, as Pepperdine never trailed the rest of the way, and they forced a fifth set. Pepperdine has the strong arm of Spencer Wickens, Jalen Jasper, and Austin Wilmot. As for set 5, Pepperdine led all the way up until 4-3, as UC Santa Barbara ripped off 6 straight points to eventually lead 9-4. Actually, they led 7-6, and then they ripped off 6 straight points to eventually win the match and complete the upset. I was very impressed with UC Santa Barbara. I forgot this matchup took place. This actually took place on Friday. Like, all those matchups that I basically broke down were on Friday. I was very impressed with the Gauchos. This was actually a rematch of the first round of the NCAA tournament from last year. And keep in mind, Pepperdine lost that last year to the very talented UC Santa Barbara. This year, UC Santa Barbara lost a lot of players to graduation, and they had a rough outing in their first 4 games. They only went 1-3. But to go on the road and beat Pepperdine is very impressive right there. The number 4th ranked Pepperdine, as the Gauchos were led by Sha Ho-shin, as he had 15 kills. They didn't really have another player in double digits in kills, which was also surprising. They had Ryan Wilcox and Dane Chalmers having 8 kills apiece. And then Todorov, Donovan, and Brandon Hicks, or Donovan, Todorov, and Brandon Hicks each had 5 kills. As a team, UC Santa Barbara hit only 238, which is still impressive for only 43 kills. Pepperdine, on the other hand, was led by Wickens, who had 17 kills. Jasper had 11 kills. Austin Wilmot had 9 kills. And Jacob Steele had 8 kills. As a team, Pepperdine only hit 201, which, well, that's not really all that impressive, considering Pepperdine was at home, and they have a lot of good offensive firepower. I'm just surprised they were unable to pull out the W against a reeling UC Santa Barbara team. Bryce Dvorak also added 4 service aces, while Trey Cole had 11 digs, and Anderson Fuller had 7 blocks altogether. UC Santa Barbara had Dane Chalmers leading the dig department with 11, while Donovan Todorov had 9 blocks. All in all, it was just an impressive win for UC Santa Barbara. I should also make note that Dane Chalmers was the libero last year. He was kind of the emergency libero last year, just because, unfortunately for UC Santa Barbara, they just had a libero issue, so they had Dane Chalmers just play the libero position, even though his primary position was outside hitter. So for Dane to come in and stuff the stat sheet and nearly register a double-double is quite impressive. I hate to flatter myself, but I'm actually familiar with Dane Chalmers. I've seen him play in high school, and this dude is a beast. Now we jump on over to the fun matches. Well, the super fun matches. The Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge. We'll go in chronological order, as we had Ohio State and UCLA kick off the matinees, as this was the number 2 Bruins' second match of the season. Their first week got canceled due to COVID protocols, and they didn't play until last week when they played Princeton. Ohio State was the number 11 ranked team, as they came in undefeated, as they were looking to try to stay unbeaten, as set 1 featured UCLA not really being in any danger whatsoever. They only trailed 4-3, and then they pulled away after it was tied 11-11. So UCLA eventually won that first set 25-18, and then set 2, UCLA was in no danger whatsoever. They never trailed, it was never tied. They won that second set 25-15. And I'm thinking, okay, well, UCLA is so good. They have a lot of talent on that team of theirs. Ohio State, unfortunately, cannot keep up. But that was when I was wrong. So UCLA actually led by no more than 2 points in that set, but they were leading for the most part, as Ohio State retook the lead at 23-22, and they eventually won the third set from Jacob Pasteur from a kill, as Ohio State won that third set 25-23. Then in set 4, neither team led by more than 2 points until it was 20-17 UCLA, and I'm thinking, well, Ohio State kind of had a good run in this match, but unfortunately, UCLA is just too darn good. But once again, I spoke too soon, as Ohio State tied it at 20-20, and then it was tied at 23-23 until Ohio State scored the last 2 points, one of which came off of an error from UCLA, as Ohio State took that fourth set 25-23. And I actually was informing Andrew Hagenbaugh, the host of the State of Ohio sports show, about this, and he was like, the Buckeyes are very scrappy, and they're very talented, and they can hang with anybody. Unfortunately for Ohio State, the buck kind of stopped there, and this time I'm not joking, as UCLA was in no danger after they led after the set was tied at 3-3, as UCLA eventually took the fifth set 15-8, as the Bruins registered their second win of the season in the early season, as UCLA was led by Ito David, as he had 14 kills. Ethan Champlin and Cole Ketcherzinski each had 11 kills, and then Dennis Guy had 7 kills with a hitting percentage of .778. As a team, UCLA hit a blistering .359. No team, I repeat, no team will beat UCLA if UCLA hits that high of a hitting percentage. That's just bonkers. UCLA's only bad set in terms of hitting was set 3, where they only hit 118. Another mind-blowing stat for UCLA is that they had 9 blocks compared to Ohio State's 5.5. Again, if UCLA faces those numbers and they have that good of a hitting percentage, boy howdy, UCLA is going to be tough to beat. I give Ohio State a lot of credit, though. They really scrapped together a great match. And I think the Buckeyes are putting everyone on notice that they are the real deal. Ohio State was led by Jacob Pastor, who had 16 kills. Unfortunately, the poor guy had 12 hitting errors, and he only hit 91 on the night. Samuel Clark and Martin Lallemand each had 12 kills, while Clark had a hitting percentage of .375. In terms of the dig category, Miles Partain added 11 digs for UCLA, while adding to his 47 assists, giving him that double-double, while Ohio State was led in the dig department by Parker Mikesh, who had 8 digs. So all in all for Ohio State, they gave it all that they could against the Bruins, but unfortunately they just could not hang with that talent that is UCLA. So regardless, it was a great first match, and that paved the way for the second matchup. Oh boy, this second matchup. Number 12 USC against number 3 Penn State. So, first set, the most either team led by was 3 points, as Penn State's last lead was actually 7-6. USC never trailed after that, as they took the first set 25-22, and I was like, for real? USC won the first set? And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's just a minor setback for Penn State. It's probably because they're in a different time zone, they're on the road, well, not theoretically on the road, but they're in another state, they haven't really adapted to California as opposed to playing in Rec Hall. Penn State will be fine. USC, on the other hand, in set 2, led 14-13 as Penn State eventually took the lead at 18-17, but then USC outlasted them after 6 ties after the 18-17 Penn State lead, as they eventually took the second set 25-23. And then I'm just really wondering, what is going on here? USC is up 2-0 on Penn State. Is Penn State having that much jet lag? Is USC just that good? Like, I was just wondering this. I'm like, how is this possible, man? USC is just that good. And then in the third set, USC actually led 10-9 after trailing for the early stages of that set. But then Penn State went on a 6-1 run and never trailed again. And despite getting a little bit of a scare from USC, Penn State took the third set 25-23. As, again, it was another tight set. And I live for those close sets. Unfortunately for Penn State, it was tied at 6-6, 7-7, and 8-8 in set number 4. But then after that 8-8 tie, USC never trailed again as they led 9-8, which eventually grew to a 20-11 lead. So if we're doing math correctly, USC went on an 11-3 run after they led 9-8, which was quite impressive for the Trojans. I'm like, wow, USC really brought the boom against Penn State, as eventually USC won that set 25-16, and they pulled off an impressive win. This win kinda, hence the word kinda, reminded me of them winning against Long Beach State back in 2019, but I think this one was just as impressive, just because Penn State, I know this was their first road challenge. I know this was kind of their first road test, and they were, again, having to adapt to a different time zone in a different state. But unfortunately for Penn State, they just looked a little off. USC, on the other hand, oh boy, they were led by Simon Gallus. He had a whopping 30 kills. Let me say that again. Simon Gallus had 30 kills. USC as a whole had 57. Simon Gallus practically carried USC, and he only had 2 hitting errors. He had a hitting percentage of .583. This kid was on fire. My good golly gracious. And he also chipped in 6 digs as well, so he was huge for USC. Sam Coburn also chipped in 11 kills. As USC as a whole, get this, you thought Simon Gallus's hitting percentage was impressive and his stats were impressive. USC as a team hit .402. There is no way USC should be hitting that great. I don't know what Penn State was doing, but my good golly gracious, USC brought the thunder. They must have had their vitamins before the game. Like, that was just impressive stuff. And they also had 7 blocks as a team compared to Penn State's 4, which is like, ugh, Penn State, what are you doing, man? So, Chris Hall also added 9 digs in addition to his 47 assists, as Penn State was led by Cal Fisher, who had 20 kills, hitting percentage of .326, and he also chipped in 10 digs, so we got that double-double. Brett Wildman added 11 kills with a hitting percentage of .261, while Sam Marsh, a.k.a. Smarsh, had 8 kills with a hitting percentage of .500. Impressive stuff. Penn State as a whole hit .278, which wasn't bad, but compared to USC's .402 and Penn State's lack of blocks, I don't see how USC would lose that match. I'm not trying to give too much credit to USC. Like, USC definitely deserves the win, but I'm just surprised Penn State just was a little sluggish. But again, this was Penn State's first actual road trip, so I can't bash Penn State too much. And this is kind of the competition that Penn State needs in their schedule, because obviously the EIVA is basically going to be, I wouldn't say a cakewalk for the most part, but they're not going to get too much challenged as opposed to their first 8 games of the season. So it's good that Penn State was able to get that competition, and they're better off losing now than losing in the EIVA tournament or the EIVA conference play or the NCAA tournament in general. Now, as for day 2 of the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge, USC had the honor of taking on Ohio State. Both of these teams had impressive results, USC having defeated Penn State the previous night, while Ohio State took UCLA to 5. So the first set, USC actually led 19-15, and then they eventually led 20-16. And I'm thinking, okay, USC is going to win this one. They're coming off of that big win over Penn State. They're not going to have a letdown, right? Also keep in mind that USC trailed 10-7, but after that, Ohio State, when trailing 16-20, outscored USC 10-4 to take that first set 26-24, and despite having to need a second set point, Ohio State won the first set 26-24. I was kind of surprised that USC kind of let up. I'm like, okay, you lost the first set. Interesting. Then the second set, USC was nowhere near as much danger as the first set, as they won the second set 25-16. Third set, Ohio State was hardly in any danger. It was an early lead exchange, but then Ohio State just turned on the gas and basically just cooked USC the rest of the way in that third set, as Ohio State went up 2-1 in the match. Then set 4, Ohio State jumped out to an early 5-1 lead, only to see USC tied up at 7-7. At 9-9, Ohio State went a 5-0 run, only to see USC tied up again at 16-16. The two teams were eventually tied up at 18-18, but then Ohio State pulled away with a 3-0 run, giving them a 21-18 lead, and eventually Ohio State went on to win that match 25-21. I was quite impressed with Ohio State's victory. I guess USC kind of got a little too high off of that win over Penn State, as Ohio State was led by Jacob Pastor, who had 17 kills. He did have 11 hitting errors, which was not great to see, but he did get some help, as Ohio State had Martin Lalaman in double digits in terms of kills, as he had 15 kills. He was also in double digits in terms of digs, as he led them in that category with 13. Samuel Clark had 9 kills and 6 digs, while Justin Howard had 8 kills. Pastor also chipped in 9 digs as well, and Noah Platfoot had 8 digs as well. Ohio State outdug USC 45-39, as Ohio State hit 203. Now for USC. USC, after they had such a big night from Simon Gallus, he had only 11 kills, as Ohio State actually decided to put blockers on him instead of leaving him wide open to get kill after kill after kill. Ohio State, as a team, had a whopping 11.5 kills compared to USC's 8.5, which isn't all that great, but I mean, it's outmaneuvering them in that category. USC was led by Brandon Browning, who had 12 kills. He had 296. Cole Paxton had 12 digs. Browning had 8 digs. And Gallus had 9 digs. As a team, USC went from hitting 402 against Penn State to only hitting 183 against Ohio State, which I guess that kind of brought the Trojans back down to earth. But again, it just goes to show you cannot get too high off on these wins. Like, you can't just say, oh, we beat the number 3 team. Let's have a letdown against Ohio State. I'm not trying to say USC was disappointing, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Ohio State, but I think for me, USC probably could have won this match. If they take that first set, it's a whole different perspective, as they could be up 2-0, and then we could be seeing a 5th set. Like, USC has to basically win those points down the stretch. They cannot afford to get outscored in that situation. Now for the match of the week from last week, we have number 3 Penn State taking on number 2 UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. The first set, UCLA led 5-4, but that eventually wound up being their last lead, as Penn State never trailed after that, and they led by as many as 7 before winning the first set 25-17. I was very impressed with Penn State after that first set. The second set, UCLA led 12-8, but then Penn State used a 7-3 run to tie it up at 15-15. Penn State led 22-21 and eventually 23-22, but they missed out on a set point. They had one set point at 25-24, but unfortunately for them, they just could not put away UCLA, as UCLA eventually won the second set courtesy of Merrick McHenry. The third set, UCLA led 14-11, but then Penn State scored 4 straight to make it 15-14 in favor of them. And then Penn State led 20-19, and it looked as if the Nittany Lions were going to pull away, but then they got outscored 6-2 and eventually lost that third set 25-22. Then in the fourth set, UCLA led most of the way and never let up, as they wound up winning the fourth set 25-19. Penn State did make a little bit of a mini comeback toward the end, but it was way too little, far too late, as the Bruins moved to 3-0 on the season, while Penn State suffered their second straight loss after starting out 4-0. I will say this about Penn State before I go over the stats. I don't think Penn State is in any danger. I think this is kind of the wake-up call that they need, because they've got a big matchup coming up this week, and again, this is the competition they want to face. They'd rather face stiff competition instead of just scheduling A, B, C, D easy opponent and winning those matches in convincing fashion. Like, you're not going to get better by beating those sub-500 teams or those unranked teams. You get better by playing ranked opponents. And so far, Penn State has played 5 out of 6 matches of their opponents in the top 10. The only one that wasn't top 10 was USC, which they kind of proved to being undefeated. Keep in mind, USC was undefeated going into that Penn State match. They were 4-0, and then they eventually moved to 5-0, only to see that record get blemished with a loss to Ohio State. To the stats now, UCLA was led by Ethan Champlin, who had 18 kills. He had a hitting percentage of .316, while Kevin Coburn had 12 kills, a hitting percentage of .385, and he also had 6 digs. Penn State actually outdug UCLA 51-40 in terms of the dig department. But the big story was UCLA out-hitting Penn State 261-155. I was very surprised to see Penn State only hitting 155, as Cal Fisher led the way for them with 16 kills. Brett Wildman had 10 kills, but he had 9 hitting errors, and Fisher had 8 hitting errors. It just wasn't the night for Penn State, and it just wasn't their weekend, but they have a chance to bounce back this week in the Battle of the Bigs, so we'll have to see what they can do. UCLA also missed 23 serves compared to Penn State's 13, which, again, I was actually surprised to see that statistic, and I was like, man, if you're Penn State, you're kind of wishing you had this match back. But again, they had to travel from Pennsylvania to Inglewood, aka Pauley Pavilion, and then they basically had to adapt on the fly. They had to change their way on the fly. So for Penn State, I don't think these losses define them as a team, but this does mean that they actually do need to cross their T's and dot their I's for the most part. So all in all, I think Penn State is a great team, but I think UCLA still has it in them, and UCLA proved why they're still the number 2 team in the nation. So that is going to do it for the recap of all of the NCAA men's volleyball matchups from last week, all the noteworthy ones. Before we go into the commercial break, we got to get into the AVCA Division 1 and 2 men's volleyball coaches poll for January 24th. So 15 through 11 consists of Ball State at 15, UC Irvine at 14, Stanford at 13, UC San Diego at 12, and Loyola of Chicago at 11. 10 through 6 consists of USC at 10, Ohio State at 9, BYU at 8, Lewis at 7, and Grand Canyon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Pepperdine at 5, Penn State at 4, Long Beach State at 3, UCLA at 2, and your number 1 team in the nation for this week is Hawaii. Hawaii did not play this past weekend as they had their annual alumni game, but they still remain idle at number 1. They got to scope out the competition, which was quite nice for them. And they got to see who is real and who is a pretender. I wouldn't call them a pretender, just because I'm surprised Pepperdine didn't fall further down, because they lost to a UC Santa Barbara team that wasn't ranked. I was also surprised to see UC Santa Barbara not ranked despite being the number 4 team in the nation. So I think Pepperdine should thank their lucky stars. And same can be said for Penn State. Though Penn State does have a better argument because Penn State defeated Grand Canyon and BYU, so you can't really stick Penn State below Grand Canyon unless Penn State has a very bad loss. And then for UC Santa Barbara, I think for the Gauchos, losing to Princeton also hurt their chances of making it into the top 15 again. But this does kind of alert everybody that Penn State, with their match opponent coming up, is going to be a huge test for the Gauchos. I think UCSB is a team to watch for. I think that first weekend did them no justice, but they do have a lot of stiff competition coming up. And they also get to play Pepperdine a second time at the Thunderdome. So we'll have to see how UCSB does against Pepperdine in the rematch. But that's not for another week, as we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial breaky break. When we come back, we've got a preview of this week's NCAA men's volleyball matches for Week 4, and we're going to have Set Point on the scene for the Battle of the Bigs event this weekend. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' in NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' in NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point. You can check out Reppin' NorCal Sports every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Gina G is sure to talk about those Northern California sports, including Stanford men's volleyball, which will mostly be talking about the San Francisco 49ers' win over the Green Bay Packers in the NFL. Also, the Show That Never Sleeps podcast will be going live Wednesday as well with Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss. But back to the NCAA men's volleyball action. Welcome back as we have a preview of Week 4 for this week. as we'll start with the sneaky good matchup. So Friday we have number 12 UC San Diego at NJIT. So I'm on the NJIT train. I think NJIT is an underrated team. For UC San Diego, they suffered their first loss of the season, but now they're heading up east to take on NJIT. I think this would be a big win for NJIT if they were to beat UC San Diego. I think the Highlanders have a chance to prove themselves, but they have to be careful just because UC San Diego does have the strong arm of Kyle McCauley as well as Matt Palma at the libero position. But regardless, I think NJIT is getting its fix of really talented opponents, and I think NJIT will benefit and eventually get better from this. Also on Saturday, we have UC San Diego playing at Princeton, so they were heading up east for the weekend. So after they're up east at New Jersey, they're going to head up to Massachusetts to take on Princeton. So it's a 2-game road trip, and it's pretty much on back-to-back nights. So for UC San Diego, this is kind of a danger matchup just because it's a very quick turnaround, and it's on the road, and you basically have to adapt to the East Coast, kind of like how Penn State had to adapt to being on the West Coast. So for UC San Diego, this is kind of one of those careful matchups. They can't be too overconfident just because they're ranked. But I think for UC San Diego, they should at least win one matchup. I'm not trying to say they're going to crush NJIT or they're going to crush Princeton. Princeton demonstrated that they can hang with the California teams. It's just that UC San Diego has to be on their toes. They have to be prepared for anything. Obviously, losing to Grand Canyon was not fun for them, but they do have a chance to bounce back and prove themselves why they are ranked. Also on Saturday, and I guess next Monday, I should make note of, Hawaii, number 1 Hawaii is back at it as they'll be hitting the road to Indiana to take on number 15 Ball State, a.k.a. the house that Mick Haley built. I'm just kidding. But for Ball State, they are ranked to start this coaches poll this week, as Hawaii is going to be a big challenge for them. Like, Ball State's really going to have to play their hearts out. I want to see them be competitive, and I feel they can. I feel the Cardinals can, but against a very tough Rainbow Warrior team, they're going to have to play spot-on volleyball. They can't afford to play sloppy, if you know what I mean. So I think Ball State is going to get a big challenge from Hawaii, but it's all good. It's all good for them just because it'll help them get better in the long run. So we'll see if Ball State can at least take a set off Hawaii. I think if they take a set off Hawaii, it'll be beneficial to them. Keep in mind, Hawaii was on their bye week, but they did play a match. They had their annual alumni match. So we'll see if the Rainbow Warriors can do some damage against the Cardinals. So that's the sneaky good matchups. Now for the noteworthy matchups. So we'll start on Wednesday. Yes, a Wednesday matchup that's noteworthy. Number 14 UC Irvine at number 10 USC. USC coming off of their 1-1 weekend in the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge as they beat Penn State, which was number 3 at the time, only to lose to Ohio State, which was number 11. So USC is in the top 10, but they face a tough UC Irvine team. UC Irvine does have some good hitters, as I just mentioned earlier, but USC has to prove themselves. This is kind of a trap game because USC does have a big game next week against Long Beach State, but this week UCSC not only plays UC Irvine once, but they play them twice, because on Friday UC Irvine will be hosting USC at the Brent Event Center. So for USC, if they can win both these matches, they're solid in staying in that number 10 position, if not the top 10 in general. If USC loses one matchup, then I could see them maybe slipping down to 11 or something. And then if they lose both matches, then USC and UC Irvine will pretty much switch spots, but I digress. So for USC, they obviously can't just bank on Simon Gallo's to lead the way. They obviously need to have other players step up like Brandon Browning and Sam Coburn. Believe it or not, Sam Coburn and Brandon Browning, along with Adam Flood, were all teammates back at Corona Del Mar High School. I actually got to see them play, and those dudes were some phenomenal. Oh my goodness. So for USC, they need to have other players step up. They can't just have Simon Gallos attempt to go for 30 kills because it's not going to really happen on a nightly basis. If it does, then this kid is probably the next Rado Parupanov. So I probably butchered that last name, but it is what it is. So that was those two matchups right there. Staying on the Friday slate, we have the Battle of the Bigs. But before that, we actually have a big-time matchup in the top 10, as we have number 7 Lewis at number 5 Pepperdine. So this is Pepperdine's chance to redeem themselves. Pepperdine had a bad loss against UC Santa Barbara at home. So they face number 7 Lewis, who is kind of looking to make a statement win. I think for Lewis, a win against Pepperdine would be huge. But if Pepperdine comes out victorious, it'll mean one of two things. One, I think that loss against UC Santa Barbara was just a blip on the radar for Pepperdine. And number two, I think it would also mean that Lewis is not a contender. I'm not trying to be mean to Lewis, but it's every single year Lewis is hailed as probably the top dog of its conference, or at least the second best in its conference. But outside of that, they're just a pretender. It's hard to take Lewis all that seriously. Like, they do well in their conference, but outside of their conference, they lay an egg otherwise. Like, they're not on the level of UCLA. They're certainly not on the level of Hawaii or Long Beach State. And I don't even know if they're on the level of Penn State. Like, we'll have to see, but I don't know. I'm not buying what Lewis is selling. And I'm not trying to be a hater or anything. I'm just saying it like it is. So, staying on the Friday slate, we have number 9 Ohio State at number 3 Long Beach State. So this is the matchup I'm going to be watching, as the Ohio State takes on Long Beach State. So Long Beach State comes in 4-0, while Ohio State, coming off of a impressive weekend, going 1-1, taking number 2 UCLA to the brink of 5 sets before beating USC in 4 sets, as Ohio State is in the top 10, which is good stuff. Ohio State can actually make a good name for them in the MIVA. My thing for Ohio State is this. They're really going to have to play well. They no longer can use they're coming from Ohio or Columbus to Long Beach or Santa Barbara or Inglewood or anywhere in California. Like, I don't want to hear this team has to adapt to a different time zone in a different state. Like, Ohio State has to play practically perfect if they want to beat Long Beach State. And honestly, it's going to be tough. But if Ohio State can give Long Beach State at least a battle, or take a set off them, I think that'll be huge for the Buckeyes' program this season. Like, Long Beach State obviously had its big test last week against Loyola and Lewis. Now they face another big test in facing Ohio State and their second opponent, which I'll be getting into in a little bit. So I think for Long Beach State, as long as they ride the hot hand of Alex Niklov as well as Clark Godbold and Spencer Olivier, I think Long Beach State should have little to no problems. Also, Aiden Knipe has done a fantastic job running the offense so far. The setter position has kind of been a merry-go-round ever since Joshua Tuaniga graduated. Obviously, they had Carlos Rivera, and then he unfortunately took a leave of volleyball for personal reasons. So then they turned the reins over to Aiden Knipe, as he has performed well for the most part, and I think he's really earning his stripes when it comes to being the setter for the Long Beach State men's volleyball team. So that night is also going to be pretty special, because set point will be at the Long Beach State-Ohio State match, and I'll get to see two former guests of Set Point. Kevin Birch, the Ohio State men's volleyball coach, and Alan Knipe, the Long Beach State men's volleyball coach. And that's going to be fun because I got to pay it forward when it comes to these two. So I still need to get them their shirts, but I digress. So it's great to see those two. It'll be great to see Kevin Birch. So we'll see what happens with the Buckeyes and the Beach. Onward to Saturday. So obviously we all know what the match of the week is, but there's actually a bigger match as well. Well, maybe not like bigger than the matchup I'm about to preview, but this matchup is just as big. Number 7 Lewis at number 2 UCLA. It's another one of those prove yourself to me, Lewis matchups, as Lewis will be playing UCLA on their 2-game West Coast swing. If Lewis can beat UCLA or Pepperdine, or at least take a set or two off them, or make it competitive against Pepperdine, I will sing praises and eat my crow when it comes to Lewis. I think Lewis has a good foundation, but the problem is they bank on one hitter 95% of the time. Last year they did it with Ryan Conan. Now they're doing it with Tyler Mitchum, and this is going to be a recipe for disaster for them unless they get everyone involved. Against the UCLA team at Pauley Pavilion, Lewis is really going to have to break out the big guns. I think Lewis can make it competitive, but UCLA coming off of an impressive weekend, going 2-0, and they're still undefeated, I think the rust has been knocked off for UCLA. I think UCLA has that it factor, and I think they are ready for this weekend. So we'll have to see what UCLA has to offer. But now we jump on into the match of the week, in my opinion. So the match of the week this week is yet another Penn State matchup, as number 4 Penn State will hit the road to Long Beach to take on Long Beach State. So I should also mention that Long Beach State is not the only team playing in the Battle of the Bigs challenge, as UC Santa Barbara will also have the honor of playing Penn State and Ohio State. UC Santa Barbara plays Penn State on Friday, then they'll play Ohio State Saturday. I kind of think that's a sneaky good matchup, just because Santa Barbara is coming off of that impressive 5-set win over Pepperdine. As for Penn State, Long Beach State, this is going to be a battle. This is basically the battle of Penn State returning all of its players, taking on a very talented Long Beach State team. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. And this is the big test for Penn State. This will prove if Penn State can hang with the big boys. Like, obviously against UCLA, they had a great start, and unfortunately for them, they just could not hold on to that second set. And again, if they win that second set, it's a whole different perspective. But for Penn State, they have to come up big against Long Beach State. They also cannot overlook UC Santa Barbara as well. Like, the Gauchos proved that against Pepperdine, as UC Santa Barbara's trying to pick up the pieces, and they're doing solid. I mean, obviously they were 1-3, but then that Pepperdine win happened. So I think for Penn State, this is another big week, because the following week, Penn State does kick off EIVA play, but until then, Penn State has to get its matches this week out of the way, as Penn State against Long Beach State is going to be fireworks. I would not be surprised if that one went 5. I think that one has the potential to go 5. And I think it's going to be a huge matchup. I could see the crowd rocking. And if Penn State does win, this will be a big testament to their team, just because winning at the Pyramid is nowhere near easy. Just because you have to be prepared to play on the road, in a different time zone, in a different state, in front of a raucous crowd. They didn't get to play in front of that electric crowd in Pauley Pavilion, but what this does mean is that they'll finally have to play a big matchup in front of another hostile environment in Long Beach State. Now, Long Beach State won't be as full as it has been in the past due to COVID, but it'll still be rocking with loud fans, and Penn State is going to have to cross its T's and dot its I's and mind its P's and Q's if they want to take down a Long Beach State team that is loaded with talent. So, and this is also a big matchup for Long Beach State as well, because the following week, Long Beach State has USC, and you never know what could happen with USC and UC Irvine. And then the week after that, Long Beach State plays UCLA at the Pyramid, and then the week after that, they play at UCLA. And then after that, Long Beach State plays in its conference opener. So Long Beach State is starting to get its sea legs in terms of playing stiff competition. They're not going to be ducking anybody at this point, as no one's going to want to duck them. So we'll see if Long Beach State can rise to the occasion. I think it's doable for them, but it still remains to be seen. I think Long Beach State has potential. I'm not saying that in a biased manner, but I think Long Beach State looks good early on, and this will be a testament to see if Long Beach State can hang with some of these big boys en route to facing Hawaii. So we'll see. But on that note, that is going to do it for the NCAA men's volleyball preview. And before we sign off, I will reiterate this again. Set Point will be at the Battle of the Bigs matchups at Long Beach. I'm sorry to everyone in Santa Barbara, but unfortunately Set Point will not be there. I have to be at Long Beach State just because, first of all, Alan Knipe was a former guest, and then I'll get to see Kevin Birch. And more importantly, I'm going to try to grow Set Point even more. I'm going to try to get more interviews with these players and coaches, kind of like what Six Rotations does on the women's side of things, have shows with more guests. I really want to grow Set Point. I prepared a lot for this show. I'm not trying to brag and say that all that much, but I really want to keep Set Point growing and make it a household name because, like I said earlier, iSports Radio is making things happen, and it's going to interact more with its fans. It's also going to try to interact more with players and other authorized personnel and whatnot. It's going to try to make the fans be a part of the action. So we're building something here at iSports Radio, and Set Point is no exception. So keep on the lookout for that. Keep on the lookout for any guests. So if you see me in person, I'll probably be in a college shirt on Friday, and then Saturday I'll probably have a suit on. I want to dress good. I gotta look good because it's a big time matchup. But on that note, that is going to do it for Set Point this week. Also, I will make note of this, is that the meet and greet with the Long Beach State women's volleyball coaching staff is also Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific time at the Pyramid Plaza in Long Beach. That'll basically be before the Long Beach State men's volleyball match against Ohio State. I'll be at that event as well. So keep on the lookout for that. Keep on the lookout for those interviews. And I'm looking forward to meeting Tyler Hildebrand as well as his entire coaching staff. I think it's going to be some fun times, and I can't wait to share this experience with y'all. But that's going to do it for Set Point officially. Without any further delay, let's drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at any point of the day, I appreciate you. Thank you. Big shout to the chat room, Marcus Vitale, Adam Karnick, Mike Pat, Davidson Crooks, Courtney Harden, and of course, Gina G, who has got me covered. I appreciate you. Definitely do check out Gina G and Reference NorCal Sports. It's going to be fun. It's going to be electric. And I will see you all on Friday for the Battle of the Bigs Challenge. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Y'all have yourselves a great week. Enjoy the volleyball action that's happening. If you're going to be at Long Beach, definitely come say hi to me. I will try to be as standoutable as possible. I know I just made up a word, standoutable, but that's me. You all have yourself a great night, and I'll see you Friday and Saturday for the Battle of the Biz. Peace!